What is it like to dedicate your work and life for democracy and open society in times of imperialism and oppression? What does it mean to be located in what we call the East and the West, or in between, especially in time of war and conflict? Tonight, we talk to founders and directors of cultural organizations in Moldova, Georgia and Kazakhstan. And this is part of a larger program. It's part of the Vital Voices program that we organize here in the Balie. Welcome, everyone. My name is Kees Fukuma. I'm a program editor here at the Balie, and I usually organize debates that are more on the subject of environmental justice. But tonight we're in a program by Jolien Vermeulen and Marlijn Geurts. In the Vital Voices program, the Balie has invited like-minded institutes from Central Europe, Eastern Europe, Central Asia to discuss what it's like to work for an open society in a pro-democratic institute. And already everyone has been learning quite a lot from everyone, I hope, at least. But tonight is all about you, because it's a public program in which we hope to really engage with the audience, with you, to discuss what we have been discussing for a couple of days now already. But first, I'm going to introduce three people, and afterwards I hope you can give them a very warm welcome and a very warm applause. Rusanda Curcă from Moldova, from Arta Azi, but also from a couple of other initiatives, but we talk about it later on. Aigrim Kapar from Kazakhstan, from Artcom Platform, and Alexandra Zibzibadze from Georgia's Future Academy, and obviously then also from Georgia. So this is a very good point in time to give them a very warm applause. And it also has to be mentioned that a lot of the people who take part in the Vital Voices program are also in the audience here tonight. So, like I said, I hope we can have a very lively discussion with everyone here. But first, that's what the evening is divided into two bits. First, we're going to have a bit of discussion here to get to know you, to get to know your work, to get to know your struggles, both within your own national government, but also internationally. And then, hopefully, we can really have an exchange here in the Balie. So I'm very much looking forward to that conversation. First, I'm going to turn a bit to the people that are surrounding, because I also really want to know who you are and what brought you here tonight. So I'm going to, you have to indulge me a little bit. I'm going to talk to you guys. So, what brings you here tonight, if I may ask?
Well, I was interested in this topic, first of all. And we are both teachers, so we thought it was interesting to see from a teacher's perspective to learn something here.
Yeah. So, and were you familiar specifically with either three of these countries, or with the topics that we're going to talk tonight, or are you?
No, not necessarily a specific thing. No.
So welcome then, and I hope you can have something that is very relevant to your work in the end. I end up standing here. May I ask you the same question? What brings you here tonight?
Obviously, the topics that are being discussed. I'm a photojournalist, and I've been working in some of these countries, so I'm very curious of what they have to tell about their countries here.
Do you already have a specific question that we might take into the debate as we go along?
Not really. It's a bit too early. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we hope to see you in due time, and I'm gonna walk to you. I think you're part of the Vital Voices project.
Yes, true. My name is Aysel, and I'm from Kazakhstan, and I'm here to support my colleagues, participants, yes, and see what would be the outcome of the conversation, which is really, really important. The dialogue in these times of conflict and war is very important. Yeah.
Especially now. So I think that the Vital Voices program was procrastinated because of the pandemic, and unfortunately now it has become more relevant than before. So thank you for being here. I hope we can return to you. No, thank you. So I'm going to return to the audience in due time. I now have two microphones, which is plenty, I should say. And I think, by manner of introductions, I think it's time now to turn to what my wonderful guests here at the table. Rusandra, I would like to start with you and just ask the question: why did you feel like you had to found Arta Azi, and what societal need did you want to meet with Arta Azi?
I think the main wish of all my colleagues from the independent cultural sector is to work in an institution that they are deciding what they to do, with whom to work, and what topic to address. So I just creating my working place. I wanted to have my working place, and I created one for me and for my colleagues.
So with your own agency and ownership.
Yes, yes. So we have the ownership of that, and we are doing what we think and that we feel that it's important for us, and it's synchronized and harmonized with our feelings.
Yeah, and can you remember what the first project was that you did with your institution?
Yes, we were young students at the Academy of Arts. Almost half of the team was at the theatrology faculty. So we were missing contemporary drama and contemporary texts on really important topics, on relevant topics for contemporary men, for contemporary women. And we decided to to found the International Festival of Contemporary Drama Verbarium as an initiative group. Then as an initiative, we organized 2 festivals. And then we decided to create an organization.
Permanent organization.
Yes, a permanent organization.
And it started off with theater, but it ended up being about many more disciplines.
Yes, now the main project of Arta Azi, it's Art in the Neighborhood, a rural platform for education through culture, who is addressing the lack of access to culture and arts in marginalized and rural areas in Moldova. And now this past year we organized different activities in 10 villages. Yeah. And the main goal was to facilitate the integration of the Ukrainian refugees in our communities. So all the activities that were organized, beginning with a workshop for kids, creative workshops, concerts, community dinners, movie screenings, where there involved the local people and the Ukrainian refugees that were coming to our villages.
Wow. I hope we can touch on that project later on again.
Yes.
In what sounds like a very busy job indeed, to do that all. Thank you already, Rusanda, welcome. Aigerim Kapar sitting right in front of me. If I may be so very lazy to ask the same question, which I think is also important. So what societal need did you recognize, and how did you meet it with the organization that you founded, Artcom?
Thank you. Good to see you all tonight. 2015, we are like all friends, artists and curators, and we just like know that there are no places or institution where we can do something together. And it wasn't enough just to visit some exhibitions and go to the bars and the restaurants or so on. And we decided to just like bring people together and to run some educational program, discussions, and how it was started actually. So, and now we develop like art school, art collider, when art meets science, bringing communities together. We do research-based project, exhibition. We are running some also. Thank you.
Peter, our technician.
So we create some initiatives, and we are caring about the lakes and in Kazakhstan, nomadic knowledge, collective memory, like in general, environmental justice, also our main topic.
Okay.
So
it's also quite a lot and a broad spectrum.
Yeah, but for us it's like not a big spectrum, because all the things are related to each other and connected, and we it wasn't like, so we should do this and that. Through what we do, we realize that these topics come and other topics come because we are living in our localities and we know what's going on around. So and we really it's a grassroots organization now, and we are doing what we not just like want, what our community needs to have.
Do you want to elaborate a little bit on, for example, how environmental justice, a question of environmental justice, might be connected to creating collective memory?
Yeah, and so the topic of the collective memory comes to our minds because we did the research and exhibition and educational program of in memory of victims of political repressions, and we are actually working on with the decolonial discourse and through all this the colonization of the Kazakhstan by Russian Empire, by Soviet Union, and they did the genocide of the nomads people, like they killed like 3 million of people. And
3 million people.
3 million people. So, and you are just like raised with the story, and I cannot say like when it's happened, like from my childhood to nowadays. So, and through this program, which we ran from 2018, 2019, and we realized that also understand like collectively also that all this all the environmental problems what we have now in Kazakhstan, we heritage from the Soviet Union time, because our ancestors, they lived in another way and in other communication with the environment, environment. So, and we and also the important thing for us is our like a culture as a nomads. So, and what we can learn from that period and what we can bring to our future, because we'd love to have our futures.
Your own future. Yeah. So, and that's a very, very painful connection between environmental justice then and...
Yeah, and for the context also, the Kazakhstan, the territory of the Kazakhstan, like all Central Asia, of course, and but especially the Kazakhstan, we have like nuclear testing site as a Semipalatinsk. You know, we have a Sarashagan polygon which are still working now and rented by Russia. Yeah, we have this Baikonur station, and also the Gulag system was located in Kazakhstan. 1,000 square kilometers was used for these camps. So this is like what we have. So we should do the work and decolonize our memory, our practice, our knowledge, so on, so on.
Yeah.
So this is like...
Yeah, and I hope we can continue that discussion about how to decolonize, especially in times where imperialism is steeply on the rise in a very violent way. So that's a very important discussion, and like it was already mentioned, it's not fortunate, but it has only become more and more relevant to have this discussion at the point in time that we are discussing it. Thank you already, and Alexander.
Yes.
From the Georgia Future Institute. Academy. So I've been a very lazy journalist, asked the same question twice already, so I'm going to just finish the trickle and ask you as well. What was the problem that you saw, and how was the Georgia Future Academy going to solve it?
Yeah, well, it all started in 2015, so we're almost 8 years old as of now. So back then, me and a few friends, mostly Western educated, came back home to Georgia, and were thinking how we could contribute to strengthening our young Georgian democracy, which obviously has a lot of issues also closely associated to Soviet past and Russian occupation for the last 200 years. And obviously we don't have tradition like in Netherlands or UK and US of democracy for being there for centuries. So what we thought would be the best idea for us to contribute to that process was to work more on civic education, because we felt that one of the major kind of underlying problems for Georgian society is that people are not getting like proper civic education. That results in disrespect to the rule of law, with market economy being flawed and a lot of nepotism and corruption happening and so on. So that was the major idea of starting the organization, and we decided to focus on young people. Back then, obviously, we were also young and it was an easier audience for us, but also we thought in long term it would be like the most beneficial. So we started doing a lot of projects which are related to civic education and mostly trying to somehow cultivate critical thinking among Georgian youth and to stimulate societal discussion about very important topics. So over the years, we started as a volunteering organization. For many years, all of us, besides we were working full-time in different organizations, but also contributing to this cause. But yeah, the major areas we work in at the moment is debating and public speaking. We're basically involved to be the National Georgian Debating Society.
So rhetorical skills and debating.
Yes, also critical thinking, and the project is quite big in scale for Georgia. We already have like thousands of alumni from all over the country. Also, we do work with elections as well, which is we do monitor elections with young people again. Also, what we do is different projects related to the rule of law or to economy or political participation, how the society should be built. So the major idea, we call ourselves a builder organization. So the work we do will have its fruits in long term, but we're trying to kind of alter and change Georgian society to getting more people who are more kind of critical thinking and aware of important issues.
So you're laying the foundations for hopefully an improved public discourse, public debate, by training young people to be better debaters, be better critical thinkers, and so probably coincidentally also having them debate each other at the same time.
Yep, obviously.
So, like physically, does it look like the Balie a bit? Because we have a debate center here. I think everyone here is familiar with that concept. Or do you have a building of your own? Or
well, we don't have the building, unfortunately. We would like to have one, probably, but it's associated with a lot of costs. And so we mostly cooperated with schools and universities. We also work closely with some theaters and some arts and public spaces when we do organize our debates. So yeah, it looks something similar, maybe not that much light as in the studio, but
I must say it's quite a bit of light, right?
Yeah, but yeah, in general it's the same, and we're trying to stimulate healthy, what we call societal discussions.
Healthy discussion.
Yes, like just to give you context, for example, like still as of now, a lot of Georgian politicians and public speakers may sometimes even engage like in physical fights, spilling waters on each other during the debates and so on. So we're trying to change how the debates and public discourse in general is being portrayed and in a way depolarize and make it more civic, let's say.
And so and rebuild a culture of democracy in that sense.
Yes.
Excellent, very beautiful work. And let's talk about the challenges you face in changing that culture quite a bit. And I think now we're gonna move to that discussion to see, because in the end I hope to have a very internationally focused debate on what it means to have all these empires on the rise again, and what it means to be an international corporation or international network of like-minded institutes. But first, maybe let's talk about the challenges that you all face within your own nation states or within your own regimes. Because I think also Moldova, Georgia and Kazakhstan are highly underreported countries, so I think also for the audience it's quite good to be aware and be familiar with the challenges you face. Rusanda, how would you describe your relationship between your institution and your own national government?
I don't know. Now I think it's not so. We are not in love relationships with our government, mostly because I'm doing very active cultural activism myself as an individual, but also within the Coalition of Independent Cultural Sector. I'm the directress of this institution. So I'm criticizing a lot the work that the ministry is doing, and then they are punishing us, cutting the financing, the public financing for our organization. So I cannot say that we are in peaceful relationships, and I think that there will be, let's say, a kind of a fight with the let's say the Ministry of Culture, because we are working more with them, because we want a transparent, an inclusive, and democratic institution, and not a corrupt one. And I am speaking loudly about that, and we will not tolerate that, and I cannot tolerate that.
Yeah.
And you know, because Moldova is one of the countries from the Eastern Partnership region, which has, let's say, a progressive government. Almost everybody in Europe knows that we have a woman president who is super smart, and she has very good intentions. But then the team, it's unprepared, and they are going on the wrong path. They are not consulting the civil society. They are not working with the civil society, with us, being the experts and knowing really the problems and having the knowledge how to solve them. So they are choosing to do the work behind us, and without really involving and following all the democratic procedures, you know, like really for us to have the ownership of everything that is happening in this country. So if you are doing regulations on something, please ask us also, because we are really working with those people in those regions. We know the problems.
On the ground.
On the ground, like really, we are on the ground and we know how to work. Yeah.
Maybe to take a tiny step back and then follow up on what you just said. So you're besides Arta Azi, you're also part and founder of this coalition of independent cultural sector in Moldova.
Yeah.
And within this particular organization, you work with your own government.
Yes, because the coalition is an advocacy platform, so we are working to improve the working conditions of the independent cultural sector.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of big problems, big like lack of access to spaces for rehearsing and exposing, exhibition spaces, performances spaces, and there are a lack of funding mechanisms, and also lack of visibility of this important sector. And we are speaking about why the sector is important, because we are tackling and speaking and exposing the most urgent problems that the society is facing. And we are speaking about the war, and we are speaking about the poverty, we are speaking about corruption, and we are doing a lot of educative work in the villages, and not only in the villages, in society also. We have this critical discourse. So you know that, and you feel that you don't have an adult government, because an adult government will see, okay, they are critical, let's listen for them, and let's invite them to have a talk and to solve the problems. But instead they are just shutting your mouth out, they are cutting your funding, and they are trying to harass you as they can.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things similar to what Alexandra sort of said, is that in this young, new public discourse, there's a lot of growth pain. So becoming an adult public discourse, like you just said. But also there's something else, that you both work with government, but you're also challenging them at the same time. And that this has direct impact to your funding opportunities, has a direct impact to what you can and you cannot say. Is that difficult to walk that tightrope of both challenging your government and
for me, you know, like I am doing this activism for a couple of years, not only cultural, also environmental activism. And to do environmental activism, it's a hard work really in the villages, because people, they don't they will punish you for everything that you are doing wrong from their perspective. So I have trained my body and my soul for this intensity of feelings when you are doing this type of activism. So for me, it's okay, but I understand my colleagues why they are not so active, because they are depending on this funding and they want to implement their projects. Yeah. So if Arta Azi will not got money from the state, we will find money somewhere else, or maybe I will have holidays for 2 years. But for others, it's really important to have these good relationships with the state, and the state knows how to make allies from the organizations. So we are giving you money, but please be quiet and merci.
So they buy docility.
They are buying docility, yeah.
And do you have the feeling that civil society is slowly catching up, is on the rise, being more critical, challenging?
Yes, this is happening a lot in Moldova. We have, let's say, almost in every village an NGO who is doing some activities in the village, and this is increasing the capacities of the civil society to make their voice heard. And I feel that there is support from the other organizations and other artists.
Yeah. Excellent. You already mentioned the war and how difficult it is to challenge and talk to your government about it. I think we're going to talk about that in a bit, but can you say, maybe to head start that conversation, how difficult is it to organize a public discourse about the war in Ukraine and Russia's aggressive war?
In Moldova, it's quite hard to do this because we have splitted society, divided society. We have a lot of Russian-speaking population and Romanian-speaking population and a lot of minorities, but also because the propaganda is super powerful in Moldova. There are a lot of channels and a lot of people are listening for this pro-Russian propaganda, and it's hard really to build a healthy discourse in the public space. But I am not trying to do this at the national level. I am trying to do this at local level, as I am living in the village. And I also I am a refugee coordinator from the village, and there are another 10 villages with 10 other local refugee coordinators. And we are trying to speak with our people and to create the environment where the local people and refugees can meet, exchange, and the dialogue is healing everything. Because why the hate is present? Because you don't know this person, you never talk to it. And now if you want to build something, you just need to create a physical space for meetings and for dialogue. And through this project, Art in the Neighborhood, we created in those villages the space for dialogue and for meetings. For the children, a physical space. Yeah.
This is vital.
Yeah. So it's if you have the right tools, and for me the right tools are the dialogue and arts and co-creation, then it's a bit easier to speak to the locals, because in the village also there were a lot of this discourse that Russia, it's good, okay, that everything that they are doing in Ukraine. And then they met the people, they learned about their stories, and also they helped. Yes, let's say I activated them a bit to involve in mitigation of this conflict and to help people, to host them. Because in Moldova, the civil society really reacted super well when a big wave of refugees were coming to Moldova. And from 100,000 refugees, only 4% were in state institutions.
Yeah.
And other 96 were at the private, in the private housing.
Yeah. So there was a big challenge for civil society.
Yes, 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 yes. They organized themselves
Yeah.
like really brave. They were very, very brave.
Yeah, and it's what you said about how vital that physical space is for dialogue. I think that's something that we can pick up later on as well when we talk about international cooperation. Aigerim, yeah. Similarly, I want to ask how difficult it is to be part of an institute that, yeah, creates a space for dialogue, creates a space for discussion, even though in Kazakhstan, as we are now having the first year anniversary of last year, the Bloody January. I think the world was shocked about how free speech was oppressed. How difficult is it for you to build towards an open discourse?
Open discourse about what?
About, for example, colonial heritage, about being critical at your regime.
Kazakhstan, it's a magic place, We can freely talking about many things, criticize, even, for example, even the exhibition and our research about the victims of political repressions of 20th century was supported by our public city administration, public funding, But of course, we didn't talk only about past, We talked through this past, we analyze what's going on now and like the not so big difference between the Soviet Union authorities and like nowadays authorities. So, and we did that. So, this January changed a lot, and I think also like I cannot represent like all country, but from my perspective, I was on the streets, and I saw my people. Who are my people? Who was with me on the streets, And from my side, I decided not to serve the people who are living in the city center, They stayed at their apartments, They lying on their sofas, watching this propaganda, TV shows, and like news, etc., etc. And now in Almaty, mostly, people discussing like if that people was terrorist or not. I don't want to even like talk with that people who have that kind of question. If you could not understand, I could not speak with you. You should educate yourself, do some work, homework, and after you came back, and I could speak with you. I just like tired to serve the people, to do this and that. So I love to work with the people who understand what it was. It's not like what kind of terrorists, like 20,000 terrorists and like on the street. No, if you just opened your window and just go to the street, you could see, And I don't wanna waste my time for that kind of people. Yeah. But I would love to work with the people who was on the street.
Yeah.
And he understand what's going on. At that people, they are not intellectuals who are now speaking from the TV, on Facebook, on Instagram, what it was, and blah, 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 do this analysis. What kind of analysis you can do? You wasn't there.
And yet you were able to organize a dialogue about political repression with the public money, with the money that was... Did the government fund that project?
If I will talk about my relationship with Ministry of Culture and Sport, how is in Moldova? Also
It's just Ministry of Culture.
So we have also the sport.
Culture, sports, and youth.
So, and we are actually living in parallel worlds.
Yeah.
And this is actually on Artcom platform. We decide next 5 years to start this fight. It could be no dialogue. We should fight, with them because we do not have now like energy and so many things to do and like but we should start this dialogue because this is our state.
Yeah.
It's not other states. This is our state, and we should work. We should educate that people. We should fight with them, and because this is like money. This is our taxes. You know, we bring that money, and also like a lot of corruption. I know what is it, and this is like my position, and this is hard. The ministry, and we just got new minister of culture, so he's like 32 years old. And when I will back to my country, I should do the appointment and meet him and talk to them. You know, maybe it could be something other things, because for the mostly like 30 years we have the Ministry of Culture with whom I just do not want to talk even. So.
Yeah, because the same regime has been in power for about 30 years now?
We still have the same regime, actually, just like some people changed, but the same.
The talking has shifted, but the regime is the same?
Of course. The pattern is the same, maybe more worse, if to be honest, because like, I don't know, do you know that the precedent in the whole history of the world, when a president of some country decide to just like kill the people on the street without any notification? Have you heard about that? I didn't. But before the January in Kazakhstan.
It happened.
It's happened. And now it's like, you know, some terrorists and we protect you. It's the same like, as Putin do, you know, but to the other country.
Yeah.
We have our own devil in our room.
Yeah. And similar to Putin, the regime in Kazakhstan is also cultivating chaos and creating disinformation, flows of false narratives.
Not only Russia, like every imperialist.
Every imperialist. So, how painful is it then if you are dedicating a large part of your life towards decolonial futures to see that imperialism on both sides of Kazakhstan, both China and Russia?
I'm not crying. I'm okay.
Are on the rise. Okay, neither am I. But
of course, I have a PTSR, you know, I go to the psychologist, I'm working on that, and still do many things with my friends, with my colleagues. They're also what we should do. It's not time to cry.
No.
No.
Engage the youth and change and grab your nation. And I think, Alexandre, we were talking also a bit about the foreign agent law that is now being imposed by Russia, so that every institute that gets help from outside of Russia is stamped as a foreign agent. Is your government happy with your? I'm sorry for the microphone hum, but I hope it gets it. But
well, as our government puts it, and they do it, it's not us, as they call civil society mostly like traitors and enemies of the state. And that's natural because when there are different interests, and those interests are very fundamentally different between the civil society in Georgia and the current Georgian government, obviously there would be a conflict. So we knew that a conflict would happen from the very beginning. That's why we decided not to be dependent on government whatsoever. So we never applied for a single government funding, and what was our deliberate decision.
Why was it so important for you?
There are two things. One thing is you never know when they cut it off, right? And if you're dependent on them and then they cut it off, basically you're in trouble and your programs and everything you do could be gone. And then the second one, they also kind of impose censorship. For example, like we have some debating organizations in the country which do debates where they're not allowed to criticize the government or criticize the pro-government channels or propaganda, and that's the price they pay for getting government funding, which we didn't want to get involved in. And also the third one is also reputation. We didn't want to be somehow linked to that government as well. So there were 3 points why we decided not to be involved with the government whatsoever. And it worked well, in our opinion, because especially with youth, which is very critical of the current government, you brought the Ukrainian context, right? And my colleague from Moldova talked that there is societal divide about Ukraine in Moldova. There is no such thing in Georgia. In Georgia, 80 to 90% of Georgian population are strongly with Ukraine, extremely pro-Ukrainian, and we all feel that Ukrainians today are fighting our war, and unfortunately we're not doing enough to support them.
Yeah.
And the only societal divide in Georgia in this regard is between the Georgian society, which is extremely pro-Western, and I think I told my colleagues also, like 80 to 85% support Georgia's integration to European Union in our country. So that's probably higher than in vast majority of European states. And because of that, the only divide is between the Georgian people and the Georgian government. And unfortunately, our government is a Russian-imposed oligarchy, which is slowly, step by step, demolishing our fragile democracy. And the law you talked about, the foreign agent law, yes, like in December, one of the parties in parliament initiated it. It's not been passed yet. But there is fight on all fronts, which our government is taking against what I call Georgia's future, which is clearly a Georgian European future, which is fighting with the media. A lot of media is being attacked, obviously opposition-minded media. They're in courts.
Including you.
We're not media, but yeah, the TV stations and the big medias. The civil societies, which are being bombarded with lawsuits, defamation lawsuits, to make sure that we don't actually do our work, but we spend a lot of time and resources fighting with the government in the courts, and that's one of the strategies they have. It's the same as the way government treats its political opponents. Unfortunately, we have political prisoners. Our third president of Georgia is now in jail, and his medical conditions are also very bad. He's basically slowly dying in jail, and the government is not giving him proper treatment. And we had this history in Georgia before, when the first Georgian president was also killed by political opponents.
Yeah.
So, and you see this kind of tendencies, and that's very sad in a way, because like our democracy is moving towards autocracy, and what we call it now is more like hybrid autocracy instead of democracy. But on the other hand, it also makes our work more important and the fight we do more important, and we have to survive this.
Are you hopeful that democracy will persist, or do you think these autocratic sentiments are too strong?
Well, I strongly believe that Georgia's future is democracy, and I think most of people believe it. Yes, the government may be successful because they have much more resources, they have much more propaganda tools, and maybe we as a civil society or opposition didn't find the way to unite in a proper way and how to oppose them, but this would eventually come, and I'm sure that we will prevail, be that by elections or any other means. But yes, that's very important. Many people in Georgia believe that's not possible as well, and I have a lot of friends, and especially young people, who kind of gave up on that fight, and unfortunately they're leaving the country. But for now, we're optimistic, and also our optimism depends on the support and continued support Georgia has been getting from the West as well, and the likes of European Union, the Western governments, United States, and so on, which have been there supporting Georgian democracy for the last 30 years. Probably without that support, Georgia would be like fully autocratic country, and we also count on that support as well. But we know that it's our fight, and we have to win that fight, and we're trying to do the fight the best way we could.
Yeah. And do you think, because I think there's a bit of a paradox about the West for quite some time now, that for some reason in the last decades of hyper-globalization and a lot of big changes in the eastern part of the globe, the West has become increasingly inward-looking, or sometimes it feels like that, and has a huge focus on itself, and maybe even was too optimistic post 89 or 91 that liberal democracy was the future. Fukuyama even proclaimed the definitive victory of democracy. Is the West to blame for autocracy on the rise in the East?
Well, I think partially, definitely, yes. And we all know that the war is going in Ukraine, but the revival of Russian imperialism actually started in 2008, and the first country Russia invaded was Georgia. And 20% of my country is still being occupied. So that war, with all respect, obviously, to Ukraine, is continuation of that imperial campaign. And the West's reaction and the politics of appeasement, when instead of standing up to Russia and fighting for values, the West was buying more and more Russian oil and gas for cheaper price, and maybe that has caused it. In 2008, Russia invaded Georgia. We got 10,000 of refugees, and there was no single sanction imposed on Russia. Putin got with it with no cost.
Yeah.
And that opened in many opinions, and now in the West as well. If you looked and listened to like the politicians in the West now, and I don't know, like the ex-NATO chief, for example, and the ex-presidents of the United States and many other countries, they realized it was a mistake. And this opened the way for Crimea annexation, opened the way for 2014 Donbas invasion, and opened the way to what's happening now in Ukraine. And it's good in a way that the West is now understanding that mistake and it's changing its course. But yes, that's the price we all had to pay. And unfortunately, many lives were lost and many people's lives been imposed. And it was a very big impact on Georgia as well. And we could all feel this. Personally, like I was only 15 years old in 2008, and I still, like, one of my childhood memories is remembering Russian airplanes flying over my city and bombing it, and nobody understood why. And at that time, there was no cost that Russia paid whatsoever for it. And yes, obviously, that's why we think that the West made mistakes. We also probably made mistakes in our countries as well, that we made it possible. Russian society, obviously, but I think, yes, West is partially to blame for it, for sure.
And it is, maybe to open it up, do you guys agree, and could international cultural cooperation in the future and sharing a public discourse within across borders, I mean, could that help to better the situation? And do you agree that the West for too long has turned a blind eye to the East?
Yes, I agree with my colleague, but also now all our countries are fearing that we will be the next, you know, that Russia will not stop to the Ukraine and they could invade our countries. And this was the feeling for the first months of the war, like everybody was shocked, everybody didn't know what to do. And then you found a refugee place, let's say, to help people to do something, but like really this fear is still persistent in our minds that we can be the next. But I understand that Moldova also have this frozen conflict, Transnistrian one, and this Russian-controlled part of the, let's say, Moldova territory, which has the biggest ammunition depot, or how to say, like in the Europe. Yeah. So they have access to everything, and they are calling this Transnistrian region the bridge between Russia and Europe, you know. And you have this situation near you. So and I cannot philosophize and. On this topic, I know only from the news that they had for decades these meetings in 5+1, 3+1, 1+2 in solving this frozen conflict, and never was solved. Because I don't know, there were no interest really to solve this conflict, actually. I don't know how Europe is benefiting from those conflicts, but maybe someone could tell me how is this happening,
Yeah.
how the global north is benefiting from the global south, who is a poor country but is giving back like two times more than the global north is giving to us
Yeah.
through grants. But I don't have like the knowledge to speak broadly and deeper about those topics.
Yeah, I think truly no one knows. But I think we can philosophize on what as a one big civil society we might be able to do if we create a space for dialogue, and then as a network, you're probably stronger than just one country on itself.
Yeah.
Agrim, this evening is called the In Between Power Blocks, and I was wondering, are you at all comfortable with that title? Should it be In Between Empires, or isn't it already a very colonial way of looking at at Central Asia, for example?
Yeah, we already start to discuss about like what kind of West, what kind of East,
Yeah.
about what we are talking, you know. Like, could we just name the name of the, I don't know, lands or countries or like, so, and my position as I also could not speak and represent all my country. The Kazakhstan is a huge country, that a
Yeah.
big territory. So I'm living in Almaty, and I used to live in Astana, like actually between two cities. I'm from north part of Kazakhstan. I'm from Arghun and Balie tribes, and so I have some kind of experience. I could say I have some kind of like expertise or point of view or so, and also we are talking like now the time of the conflicts, but the conflicts was always, you know, nothing changed for last 500,000.
I thought that was the reason of the humming, but it's a part of the solution apparently.
Thank you. And so, what about conflict in Afghanistan? What about Syria, you know? What about now the revolution in Iran? What should I do?
Yeah.
Should I?
Okay, Peter, this is the moment. What is the best configuration of microphones? Because they're all starting to hum a little bit. Should we just continue to try what we have in front of us?
I think she can use the handheld for the moment.
Okay, try the handheld for the moment is the solution. Stay clear from that one. But now this one is also starting, I think. But you were saying...
Yeah, what about the conflict in East Turkestan? Yeah, the country was divided by China and Soviet Union, and now the Chinese doing genocide against Uyghur and other Turkic people. So, and
Yeah, I think it was working, but I think, yeah, the question I asked about whether that title is at all awkward, but maybe it was a way of asking...
yeah, and now, like, so also, like, I'm from Kazakhstan, yeah, and Kazakhstan, we are located, our geopolitical situation, we are located between two empires,
Yeah.
Russia and China. We have the longer border with Russia and with China, but actually, like nomad people and Chinese people, but not Chinese like many others, you know, we have this relationship like more than 5,000 years. 5,000 years, you know, it's so many things happened there, and of course, like we just like do not remember what was there before, and so on, and also with the Russia, Soviet Union, etc. And I'm working, and I did, and actually continue to do research about the situation and the future about the Lake Balkhash. Balkhash Lake, it's a lake located in the Kazakhstan, but the basin of the lake also in the territory of the eastern Turkestan, which, as you probably know, as a Xinjiang, we are not calling that part of the land as a Xinjiang. We're still calling this Eastern Turkestan or Ili or somewhere else, because we have some like also Kazakh who came to Kazakhstan from that territory. They didn't back. They used to live there from thousands of years. You know, they didn't back. They just like moved to Kazakhstan because it's more safe for them. And we are also they're also our colleague and our friends. So, and this the story of the Balkhash is also like it's connected with this part of. With Eastern Turkestan through the Ili River. And this Ili River, this transboundary river, and it comes from China and to this Lake Balkhash, and on this Lake Balkhash we have the Saryshagan military testing site, which is active for now, and like this territory just hidden zone, and ecological catastrophe there ongoing, you know, and no one do not pay attention. In next 30 years, this Balkhash lake will disappear. And also Russia, they have the, and they're using this Saryshagan polygon in Kazakhstan as a shield from the China. If the China will attack Russia, they will use these weapons to protect us also, you know, not only Russia also. And yeah, it's a big lake. It's like 16,
you can see it from space.
16,000 square kilometers. Yeah, it's no, sorry, it's the 16th largest lake in the world, and 400 square kilometers.
And now, because it's vital for the imperial aspirations of China, the lake is threatened to be lost forever.
Russia and
China.
China. It's like. This lake just represents the interest, the intersection of the interest of Kazakhstan, of China, and Russia.
And in that sense, right between two empires. And how can your art challenge that juxtaposition of empires?
I do not challenge.
No
it's
challenge.
Not. I do not challenge that.
No.
I don't care about challenging this one, you know. What I need to do, what I want to do. I want to research. I'd like to find some way to decolonize the space, because like amazing things happens there on that lake, you know. The people just backing their lands who was stolen by Russian Empire, Soviet Union, and now by the some big companies, and the people just remember that piece of land belongs to their family like 200 years ago, you know, and he just bought Tolubek Aghat, he just bought that land, and they do that there his own stuff, you know, and the people remember many things. But the problem also of this oral history, you know, this the cultural practices of the nomads, and
the languages,
and I'm more interested on that to challenge someone else.
That politics is.
And I do not believe of that, you know, international dialogue. Dialogue, it's not enough. What does mean dialogue?
So maybe
what about collaboration, partnership? If you really want to be together, we should do something together, not just like.
Yeah, but then you should start from somewhere, and that somewhere is to have a space for dialogue, because we met here. I know you. I met you.
No,
I met Alexander, and then there can be partnership. It doesn't, you know, appear on the empty land.
No, of course. I'm not saying that it's appear from the empty space, but I think just like everyone talking about dialogue, but what we should go deeper to partnership and collaboration. We already start our dialogue. I mean, not only now I'm not discussing about about, like, because some researchers come to Central Asia. Oh, I would love to my research with dialogue and blah blah blah. Like, oh come on, you are not an expert of Central Asia. You came to the Kazakhstan for 2 days, 3 days, and after, like, he or she they becoming expert of Central Asia. And talking from like some conference in the position. Like, what is it? I would love those dialogue. No, come on. I don't need your dialogue. Let's do something together. If you really want to engage with this part of like world or something, do not do extraction, of the knowledge, of the practice, of the. So
and if we would start to challenge the audience a little bit, for example, or everyone here at the table, what might that look like? The cooperation that you described. What can we physically start doing today to start working towards that cooperation? And feel free to also join in here.
Well, I would believe that, at least for Georgia and the way we feel, and I think that resonates well with a lot of people in Georgia, is that what we can be doing now is making sure that Ukraine wins this war. And that's probably the first and foremost thing. And the Russian Empire doesn't prevail. We know that for sure because we had this experience for 200 years living under Russia, and we know in what result it happened. So all you all can do, it's like, for example, our debaters are doing now. This debating season, we announced that we're debating for Ukraine. And all the money which we're fundraising, we're sending to support Ukraine in this war. That's probably one simple thing everyone can do. Yes, I obviously agree that the West is not perfect, but I'm also a strong believer in democracy. And in our case, I think it's all about values in the end, right? And even in this divide which you guys presented, yes, the West may not be perfect, but it stands for democracy, it stands for the rule of law, and it stands for many other things worth fighting for. And that's something which majority of our people also believe in. And then something or someone like Putin or his evil empire come and then try to take that away from you.
Yeah.
And against your will, obviously. And that's probably something which we all can unite around, and that would be my call to action. Support Ukraine for now. That's the best way you can support Georgia, is by supporting Ukraine and making sure that Ukraine prevails. So then the fear which you were talking about, that Georgia and Moldova and others would be next, doesn't happen. And that's actually the fear we all had. That's why we're feeling that it's
a paralyzing fear.
Yeah, that's for the first 1 or 2 weeks of Ukrainian war, probably the whole country was paralyzed in Georgia, because we were easily realizing that the next easy target of Russian imperialism would be Georgia or Moldova. And we've seen it before as well. Like, as I told you, the country is being occupied. So it was very easy to imagine what would happen. And for that fear not to realize, Ukraine has to win this war. And there's no other way. And that's why a lot of people in Georgia feel that our government is not doing enough. That's like the big societal divide we have, that we're demanding more support towards Ukraine, and we feel that our government is not doing enough. For example, even not sending the weapons and ammunition and support they could, and not even returning back the weaponry which Ukraine gave to us in 2008 to defend ourselves. And that's the divide we have. And that's why Georgia that's the biggest divide. For example, for the last few months, all civil society case has been fundraising for generators, electric generators, to send them to Ukraine, because as you know now, it's very cold in Ukraine, it's winter, and Russia has been bombing Ukrainian civil infrastructure, and hundreds of my friends are now sitting at their homes with no electricity and with no gas, and what we've been doing is sending some kind of help. And unfortunately, our government also didn't do this because they didn't want Russia to become angry that we're helping Ukraine more. And instead of that, the civil society did it. And you all could also participate in that and help Ukraine. And that's the way it is for many Georgians, and I believe many in Moldova as well, because we realize that our future and our Western aspirations all depend on Ukraine now. So we can do one single thing, is somehow support Ukraine.
Yeah. And you also mentioned briefly that that the discussion should be about values, and I think that's also part in that, is that your aspirations then are not per se Western, but we should decouple those values from being either Western or Eastern, because it simply doesn't matter. It's about
it's exactly
and self-ownership.
Yeah, now the West is the place which the best kind of demonstrates those values. Maybe not perfectly, but better than the others, right? If you compare the rule of law in Russia and the rule of law somewhere in Netherlands or in UK, obviously that's a huge difference, right? And people see this, and they see this in many ways, with the standard of living and many other things. And yes, it may not be perfect, and we all know that. And there are a lot of flaws in Western democracies. We've seen that in many countries. I don't know, like it was 1 year of anniversary of resurrection when pro-Trumpist people, for example, stormed the Capitol a few days ago, right, in the United States. But still, the Western democracy, with its a lot of flaws, it's a democracy. And in Russia, there is no democracy. Russia is autocracy, it's dictatorship, and that's the choice we have.
So currently, unfortunately, East and West do define those differences, but hopefully, in the end, they will not. And I think it's overdue that we start opening the floor to everyone who is sitting around us.
I just wanted to add a comment.
Yeah.
This wonderful Western democracy, that this democracy is only for Western people and not for people who are coming from the East.
Yes, and
so I think one action that we could jointly implement is for the Western to stop to exploit the Eastern people who are coming and working for really small salaries, surviving here and working for the wonderful world and healthy world of the Western people. So I think just to have this feeling of respect that the people who are coming from the East, from the poor countries, they are, let's say, at least a bit respected. Because we had those cases from COVID times when people from Romania, Moldova, and Balkans were sent, they were going to harvest this asparagus, this plant.
Asparagus.
Yes.
So
in Germany.
Season work.
Yes, season workers. They didn't care that they are living in, I don't know, super bad conditions, like 12, 15 person in a room with no sanitation, with very poor meals.
Yeah.
And but there is a need. We need to harvest strawberries in Spain. We need to harvest in Germany, in Netherlands, and everywhere.
Yeah.
So this feeling of that everybody is equal and we are respected and we have this, feeling that we are equal citizens of the world. I think this is the first step to do, because we had also the situation when only if you are from European Union, then you have some rights and you will be respected.
By those rights.
But if you are not from European Union, yes, we care about your feelings. Yes, it's about democracy, but sorry, guys, we care more about those people.
And also, I would love to also comment what kind of democracy we are talking. Like Alexander, he said that Georgia do not have the tradition of the democracy. But my land, we have tradition of democracy. It's called Stepan democracy, and you can see, and different kind of democracy also.
It's an ancient type of democracy that's way
not
older.
ancient,
but even
just it's finished with the Russian Empire colonization. It's like late 18th century.
Yeah. I meant ancient in terms of origins, not that it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, and also,
but
what I meant was Western democracy, obviously. In this case, we have some traditional Georgian democracy as well, obviously, but...
does it matter? whether it's Western or Eastern?
Well, it depends. Like, if, for example, traditional Georgian democracy, for example, does not include participation of women, and I think that's not the best democracy, right? And probably it's better to women to participate, and many other things. So, yes, obviously, back to 12th century, for example, our king at the time decided to create the first kind of type of parliament, which was very democratic, but at the moment, I think that's traditions and those are important and something to build on. For example, 1918 to 1921, Georgia was independent for 3 years. When the Russian Empire collapsed, and before the Soviets invaded us, we were independent for 3 short years. And in that 3 years, we created one of the most progressive constitutions. The first 3 female parliamentarians in entire Europe were elected in Georgia. And this type of stuff, obviously, we had back in history, but unfortunately, again, due to autocracy, which came to us in 1921 and was there for 70 years, we lost that tradition, and we have to rebuild it now. And that's the point which I make. And yes, I agree fully with you that, again, the Western democracy is not ideal and has its many flaws. But again, if you look at the big picture and not look at the small puzzle pieces, at least here is democracy. And what we're fighting against is not democracy at all. That's dictatorship, autocracy, or call it whatever you want. And obviously, if you choose between flawed democracy and autocracy, you would choose flawed democracy, and that's, I think, a very practical decision, and that's something which 80 or 90% of Georgians choose rather than choosing tyranny or being part of empire.
Yeah, but we don't need to choose between. We need to build what we need, you know?
Well, that's very idealistic,
yes,
but
it is,
unfortunately,
because if you will not be idealistic, you will end up somewhere. We don't need somewhere. We need like really specific path. So yes, this is democracy, but that democracy where everybody is feeling okay with itself and it's respected, and they are building together what they need.
Yeah, just to reiterate on that.
I think Alexander,
one point, and I am done with this.
Are you sure?
Yes,
that's your final point then for the entire evening?
No, for this specific point.
Okay, one more, and then we're going to open the floor.
Definitely, we should get into that democracy, and we should fight for it to get better. I think the best way for us to do it, to enter it and try to change it from inside. It's impossible to do it in autocracies, but it's possible to do it. And even if our positions are not mainstream and not supported, at least you can freely express them and say them in this type of democracies. And I think that's already something, and that's foundation for the future. And that's what I mean.
Foundation for the future. That's where I'm going to stop you right now.
Yeah, but then there are another comment. Our colleague from Ukraine, she said that Russians, what they did, the first in the region that they occupied, they destroyed the libraries and the history. So I am not super best in history. I cannot say that I know the history very well. But the history says that there are cases and cases when autocracies felt, and also corrupt people felt, and that democracies were built. So there are stories and stories, successful and unsuccessful, but we should just follow our needs.
Yeah, and then like you said, for some perverse reason, we have now come to consider democracy as something of a Western product, even though these democratic values, as such, are part of a much more universal human condition. And I think that's when we can hopefully start to have this discussion about decoupling ourselves from terms Eastern or Western. Well, that's maybe a lot to ask, but maybe now I'm gonna see if we can widen the discussion a little bit and talk to the people who are sitting around us. And I think maybe check if there are some hands of people who already at this stage feel like they want to add something to the discussion. I cannot see it from behind me, but I can see someone in front of me. And I am not sure if we still have any microphones to go around. But I'm very willing to try. And would you mind saying who you are?
Yes, my name is Sam Seifert. I'm Dutch, but I've lived about 30 years abroad. I've lived in Russia, in Siberia, for 2 years, Albania for a year, and many years in Angola and West Africa. We're talking about democracy and we're talking about civil society, but one of the weapons that the autocracy that we're talking about are using is the technique of making knowledge or the truth unknowable. So it's a tactic of throwing everything in doubt so that no one actually knows what is true anymore. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's a deliberate tactic, and it's unfortunately one of the tactics that the West, with all their democracy, have forgotten. I mean, everyone has forgotten about Machiavelli and how Machiavelli explained to the Borgias how a prince should keep his or gain his reign. But this knowledge is actually very necessary in order to resist the autocracies and to build the civil society that you want. So my question is, because my experience in Siberia, this was beginning of Yeltsin years.
Yeah.
It was the years of total chaos, and it was when Mr. Rutskoy occupied the White House, the parliament in Russia, and so I was in Western Siberia, and the government of Western Siberia already wanted to become independent. And so it was very chaotic.
And your question is, sorry?
My question is that at the time I found that a lot of people actually had difficulty understanding what the truth was. And of course this was because of many years of propaganda. To what extent is that a problem in your countries? Because if you want to come to a discussion, you have to
have a shared truth.
You have to have at least a knowledge of what is true. And I'm sure that you must have had this problem because of years of propaganda from the Russian of Soviet times.
Yes. Thank you very much. So the question is, how do we get to a shared truth that is so fundamental for practicing democratic values? I think this is a very difficult and very fundamental and large question. Maybe we can collect one more question and see if we can have a bit of a. There's a hand over there.
Hi, my name is Ilya, and I'm from Belarus. I think my question is more like in many societies we kind of speak a target group like youth or youth again, and we kind of leave out the rest of society. So we kind of have we educate the youth, and then we kind of leave what I have heard, and I've been part of Eastern Partnership, that it's usually the youth that has been part of these discussions. Are we leaving the rest of society out in these discussions? Are we not why we're not educating? Is it by choice? Is it by stance of the European Partnership maybe as well? Because they're also more focused on youth.
Yeah.
But kind of like feeling sometimes that we're kind of leaving part of society out, and what we can do about it.
Yeah. So I think we can discuss with everyone here, and especially everyone here at the table. The first half was how do we get to a situation where there is a sense of a shared truth? So if we want to work towards an international civil society, how do we get there? I think that's a very difficult question, but we have to talk about how we can create that space. And also a very interesting question is, how do we make sure we include not only our youth, but also bear in mind that we have to get everyone on board, the elderly, the marginalized, everyone. Easy questions, I imagine.
No, but there are not complicated questions, because if you want to have a shared truth, you should invest in education and culture. And I don't stop saying that every time when I have the chance, that if you really want to have a society with a super developed critical thinking and where there is social cohesion and solidarity, so please invest in education and culture. And then you will have really easy times to solidarize them and to solve the societal problems.
Yeah. So actually the questions are very connected. Actually.
Yes, and not to to exclude the older generation. I know that it's very hard to work with them, and for me also, because of this Soviet past, and they are really longing for that period because that was their youth, young, let's say, and they were.
It was the truth when they grew up.
Yes, and they were partying a lot. They had access to culture, and even if was to culture and arts, even if everything was related to propaganda,
And politicized.
but they had a chance to be mobile in all the Soviet Union, so they are really longing for that. And I am listening for my mom's stories when she is saying we had a lot of concerts, a lot of cinemas. We were waiting these Indian movies, and just like that, And I am saying yes, we don't have that. We don't have access to culture, to education, to mobility, to spaces for dialogue, but they had this because Soviets knew how to colonize. They used education and culture, and they succeeded. And if we want to decolonize,
You beat fire with fire.
and to build strong societies, we should invest in high quality education and access to culture.
Yeah, I just would be one careful there as well, because in my personal opinion, just investing is not enough, because in essence, the education system, at least I would talk in case of Georgia, is still the reminiscent of what we had during those colonial Soviet past. On principle, the system didn't change. Like if you look at Georgia's secondary education system or university system, it's still based on the same values and the same kind of system which we had during the Soviets, and just simply investing and pouring more money into it, I think could even be more counterproductive in that way, because you would actually get more victims of that system. So I think before investing in it, we actually have to change the system. We have to make it more kind of critically oriented, more critical thinking oriented, and change a lot of stuff. And the point you made is very relevant to Georgia. Also, just to comment on that, we feel it every day. No matter what, always the major propaganda point of Russia, and we feel it every day, is that yes, Russia is bad, but West is also bad. So that's the major point they have. For example, yes, maybe in Russia we kill journalists and put political opponents into jail, but on the other hand, all Europeans are some kind of people who only care about some hedonistic gay stuff. And that's the type of propaganda Russia constantly imposes on us, and it's very hard to find solutions to this. But what we've been trying to do is also to look at the essence of those stuff. For example, what worked very well in Georgian cases, for example, we researched and identified that, for example, cases of incest, so Russia is the second in the world. So they were trying to portray themselves as kind of close to conservative Orthodox values as Georgians, and then we say, okay, look at Russia. The rape rate is in top 5 in the world. The incest rate is the second in the world. So how does this correlate with your conservative values? So obviously there are flaws in their propaganda as well, and you have to somehow identify it and put counter-propaganda. What the mistake we made in a lot of times is to put in defensive position. So we usually start to defend ourselves and saying, yes, but West is not only about, you should go and attack it. And that's probably the best way to do it, going to your question. And regarding the youth, I agree. In a way, if I was an investor, probably I would also invest more in youth, to be honest, because it's much cheaper and much easier target in a way than older people. And I had that experience. I worked with a lot of people who are like 60 years old, 70 years old. It's much harder to talk to them and influence their thinking. And if you look from that perspective, maybe it's a right direction. So we have like limited amount of resources to put it more into use. Maybe it's a better long-term investment in a way. if we have enough resources for everyone, obviously I would go for everyone. But in this case, I think we're very limited in resources in general, and that's why also we decided to focus on youth, because we feel it's more fruitful and more kind of
more return
on investment, basically. Yes.
Okay. Did you feel what did you think about the two questions and the reactions to the two questions?
So, there are no truths. It's not possible to have this truth, you know. Yes. So from that propaganda, and I'm working with collective memory. My background is historian, so I'm a curator, so I do some kind of stuff. And what we can do, we can rethink. We can just like to analyze how it was, and so this is some facts. We can interpretize that facts. We can do some ideas, and maybe it doesn't matter how it was like on that time, but what we learn from that, and what we gonna do with that knowledge, what we have, and we are running public discussions, and we lecture also and workshop. It's like and our target group, not only youth, and the elders also come to our programs. And I personally work with my parents. You know, I'm speaking a lot with my parents, with my father, with my mother, with my auntie, and we criticize each other, you know, in the like family level. And my peers and colleagues, they also do, and we also like talking with our elder generation, and because they are speaking with our children. I don't know, but I mean like they have. So, and also the important thing for we are running also the school and the audience. It's important to have like a different generation in one room. We should share and learn and exchange, because we are part of like one society. I cannot do this. This is like my people, and that one is not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you are right when we are speaking about education. When I say education, it's about the type of the education that our organization are doing. And when I am speaking about arts and culture, I'm not speaking only about folklore. I'm speaking, and not classical, about contemporary art, about politically engaged art and socially engaged art.
Yeah. So just to be clear there.
Yeah. No, I obviously know that. Just I wanted also to clarify in a way that who can invest in education, it's usually mostly the states.
Yeah.
And if the states invest heavily in the current education systems.
I'm not agree with you, because I invest my skills and my time to organize informal educational program for my community. And my friends, my community, we are doing this for 5 years.
Yes, I know. I'm not saying that.
We changed many things. So like.
Yeah, I think that's clear, and I think what was meant was a very wide, also informal range of pathways towards education. But I think that was clear. Thank you for that clarification. I think I'm going to throw one more question into the room, and I think throw it at the table as well. And then I think, even though I feel like the discussion is now starting to finally redevelop, and I think we have a lot to discuss now. I think at some point we also have to direct ourselves towards refreshments, towards the end of the night. But I think that's a question that I just have for everyone, especially because this week Vital Voices is about finding pathways for international cooperation between countries, between like-minded institutions, between the Balie, the East and the West. How do we establish this international cooperation and really make it physical and tangible and a force to be reckoned with in times wherein international powers are actively trying to disengage collaboration? So we are up against a big power that's trying to disengage collaboration. How do we do it nonetheless? And I think I'm curious to hear from you.
I have a small comment, maybe to my colleagues at the roundtable, and a question also. because in my opinion, when there was the end of the Cold War, it was not just the East in crisis, but also the West. We've seen that the capitalism, in fact, came to its limits because they cannot cater to the needs of their citizens. So they're in big crisis, like half of Americans don't have health security. I've heard that British people neither. We in Slovenia, some 120,000 people don't have a personal doctor, for example, because there is such crisis. And also when you were talking about shared reality or shared truth, or however you call it, we still should think that, we don't live like 30 years ago, but there is Facebook, and we have very scattered realities, they're directed by algorithms. So how to make shared realities within this situation somehow. So I think that the reasoning, what East could learn from West is a little bit obsolete, Alexander, sorry. That we should think more about this kind of global context and how in this global context we can reinvent the collaboration, not in the way that how the East and West can collaborate or stuff like that. And I also appreciate the comment of our colleague from Moldova also that, we can talk about democracy, but when you don't respect refugees, when you don't respect invisible workers that are coming from global south or from the east, then this is not really, you're not really following democratic values, although you may have a democratic constitution.
Yeah. So as long as that exploitative mindset exists.
Yeah, and also it's we have individuals today that are richer than countries, so it's like it's completely different context, and I think we should recalibrate our mind to these new realities, in fact.
And are you at all hopeful? Does a week like this one, does it help for you to see a hopeful pathway into?
I think it's more or less realistic that, I don't know, probably some more people will kill each other and then they will do something else and then they will kill each other again and so on. So yeah, I'm hopeful.
Let's see how I can end the evening on a hopeful note. Thank you for your comment. I think that was a very valid point about, especially what you said about the exploitative relation and how that prevents an equal and open civil society. Are there final remarks over here? I have a blind spot over there, but I can't see any hands. There's definitely one here.
I think I'll do like a final remark that in future more collaboration is needed because the dictators and authoritative regimes, they will all work together. They all learn from each other. They all share their secrets to each other, and you can see same things happening in the same country later on. And it's what is done in Belarus or what is done in Iran is done in China or vice versa. And I think we need to cooperate more and actually learn from each other also and create some kind of global knowledge service of all that already is happening in a lot of countries, in decolonization projects, education projects. Because, the problems are very similar, maybe not just to Soviet Union, but also in other parts of the world, and a lot of projects are being done. So I think idealistically, we should look forward and cooperate more, and idealistically wait till Russia will fall and burn, and that will be a nice day. Oh yeah, well, we'll start with that, and then we'll go for the next one.
It's a very nice comment because we had not yesterday, but the day after yesterday, presentation and a discussion with an investigative journalist. And
Paul Ruda.
Yeah. And he said that the criminals and the corrupt people, they have really strong networks.
Yeah.
So I know if you from Romania sold some women to Netherlands, I will know when, where, how many, the price, everything. Because we are discussing and everybody is knowing about that. That's why they are working. They are so strong and hard to destroy. So, it's not the good comment. Yes, we should act like the criminals, you know, and to have strong networks. But this is the way that can make the change, just to create stronger, even more stronger networks that they have.
Yeah.
They have. And to communicate and to collaborate. And then at the policy levels also to create the opportunities for different countries to collaborate. And to offer this institutional support, capacity building for the organization. Because, for example, we have access to this Creative Europe program. Moldova, it's eligible to apply. But us, as Arta Azi, who have 2.5 workers, we cannot apply because we cannot absorb those money. Second, we don't have the infrastructure to host and to organize the events because we don't have the support and the capacities. So then we are eligible, but we don't have any access to it because we don't have the capacity.
Yeah.
So we should invest more in the capacity building of the civil society and then to support such kind of collaborative projects.
Yeah, and similarly to how you kicked off the evening by mentioning that governments all over should be open to what's happening on the ground and to listen to civil society on the ground and the people who work with them, such as yourself, then that opens a whole other doorway to build these networks and to build these capacities.
Yeah.
Here's what I'll do. I think there's still plenty of energy left in the room to discuss the future of what we're trying to achieve. But I think we're going to move that discussion to the bar, to an informal space where we can talk freely, where we can look each other in the eyes and have these conversations. I think for now. For now, I'm just gonna say that I hope that these values that we have been discussing, that's been shimmering through the conversation, have been peppering throughout the night that I've heard, equality, democracy. I truly hope that we can uncouple this from our Eastern-Western divide and colonial and imperial histories. I hope that we can find the knowledge, the shared knowledge to build upon an international civil society. I hope also that we can learn from dictatorships and thieves and be as bold as an actor as they are to establish these networks and not be afraid to copy them in that sense, and maybe to totally close the loop like you kicked off the evening. I hope we can find pathways to do that, both in education with the youth and everyone else as well. So for now, I want to definitely thank these wonderful speakers at the table here. Rusanda, thank you so much. Alexandra, thank you so much. Aigerim, thank you. And everyone who was here listening in, talking along, and who was watching at home. We'll be back with many more vital voices this week. But thanks for now.
Thank you.